Hello, my name is James Doust of James Doust Consulting Services. Some of you watching may know me as such, more as Jim Doust or simply JD. Others may not know me at all, including those that have stumbled on this video I have posted to YouTube. My experience with CAD, computer-aided design, is over 30 years, including multiple CAD systems, but specializing over the last years in NX. This video is directed to current users of NX 11 or prior to demonstrate the measure command changes in the functional releases since NX 11, specifically NX 1899. I'm going to define a functional release being defined as a release where a file saved, a part file saved in that release, cannot be opened in any prior release, such as NX 11 saved parts cannot be opened in NX 9. The first functional release after NX 11 was NX 12. Since NX 12, there have been 3 more functional releases, but not NX 13, 14, or 15 as you may think. Siemens reinvented the release numbering system and named them NX 1847, NX 1872, and currently the latest functional release is NX 1899. With that being said, this right now, what you're looking at is NX 11. And if you look, what most designers or tool makers or machinists or CNC operators are, the command they use most a lot of times is measure distance. And you'll be familiar with this if you've used it, the measure distance command. There was also, which I have up here, is just a simple diameter for measuring diameters, simple radius for measuring the radiuses, angle to measure angles, and if I go to my analysis tab, which I've opened here, also measure body, measure face, measure length. Once NX 12 was released, see again, measure distance is still there, but all of a sudden it says to be retired. Measure body to be retired, measure face to be retired, measure length to be retired. Simple radius and simple diameter, if you go into any of the releases after this, they'll say to be retired also. But you could still do the measure command, measure distance command. What's a little different in NX 12 is the measure command was added. And what this command is intended to do is to combine all the rest of the measure commands into one command. Now you're going to find, if you go from NX 12 to NX 1847 to NX 1872, you still have the choices of all of the to be retired measure commands along with the new measure command. Once NX 1899, which I have open right now, was released, well, all the other measure commands were retired, meaning they're no longer available for the user to use. Specifically, you have only the measure command, and like I said, it was advertised as combining 16 different measure commands into one measure command. Now once you launch the measure command, If you've used the measure command before, just measure distance, which most people use a lot. What you're going to want to do, hint number 1, is to say show results in the information window. And that'll pop, and once you measure 2 points or whatever you want to measure, that'll pop up that information window, which I'm sure a lot of you like to see because it gives all the results in a very clear text file type dialog box. The other hint I'm going to give you here is to click Enable Hints. That brings you up a little hints window, which sometimes can be valuable. Alright, let's take a look at what they've all combined here. There's a lot of variables in this window here. First of all, the object to measure has choices, as you can see, and the results filter is actually what you want to measure, what the results of what you want to measure are. So there's distance, there's your curve edge, which is your radius or diameter, angle, measure a face, measure a body. I'm going to skip measure extreme, and then there's others. The object to measure, you have an object set, point set, vector, and a CSIS. I'm going to only concentrate on the top 3 here and object set. Now, the most basic measurement you're going to see is to measure just a point to a point. So first of all, I'm going to pick point here. But what you have to remember is what you pick an object to measure goes hand in hand with the results filter. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to, right now it's set to other, I'm going to turn that off and I'm going to say distance. And one thing you notice up here with my point constructor is if it's on object, that grays out, but once I go to point, my point selector turns on. So I just want to do an end-to-end measurement here. And that's going to be the end of that. And then I'm going to pick this endpoint there, and it's going to show me the minimum distance. Which, if you've ever measured anything in NX, you don't really care about that. You want to know the delta values. But I don't see that right now. I see show results in the information window. I'm going to apply this to see that, and all that gives me is that 3D distance. So this is hint number 2, is go to preferences here where it says little gear, hit that, and you want to, under general, display XYZ delta values, and that may be turned off by default. That's what I've found. So doing okay. Now do the same thing. I'm going to hit that and I'm going to hit that, and all of a sudden my little information window shows me a delta X, delta Y, delta Z, and if I hit apply here, which I want to do so it remembers it the next time around, these settings, it should remember everything you checked as a default the next time you open a new session of NX, if this is the last session you got out of. So this is going to show me my delta X, delta Y, delta Z, just like I'm used to seeing. The other one that a lot of times people want to do is they want to measure a radius. They want to know what the radius is. But like I said, this goes hand in hand. So I'm going to change that from a point to an object. I'm going to turn off distance here because I'm only interested in a curve or an edge. My type filter up here, I'm going to just set to no selection filter. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to select that curve. and you'll see it gives me a diameter of 2. In this case, most people are concerned with a radius, and that will, if I just do this pull down, will show me the radius of it being an inch. If I want to show the results in the information window, which normally on this case you don't want to do, but I can apply it, and it'll show me the radius there of 1 inch. Now many times I have an object and I have this here set to a curve edge, and maybe I want to come up here and say face, and I'm going to select that face. Now notice nothing really happened, but I have enable hints on, and it says up here to see face measurement, enable the face results filter. Okay, now this is the results filter, as you can see, and here it says face, so I'm going to hit face. Now it comes up and shows me the diameter or the radius. Like I said, they go hand in hand together. Just going to apply that, get out of that. So now I'm going to just do it with an object and a face. And I'm going to pick that face again without having this radius on. And you can see, even without that on, it's going to give me the radius of that face. I'm going to apply that to clear. The next thing that a lot of people are going to do, and I'm going to skip to the next one, is an angle. And once again, I say object here, and it's going to look for an object. I have my type filter set to face. I'm going to pick that face and that face, and it's going to tell me the angle is 9.3 degrees. I'll apply that to clear. And then instead of object, I'm going to hit vector. Now, if you look at the Q line, which is what this little hint line up here in my left-hand corner says, select objects to infer a vector. It also shows me this little blue arrow where I can actually pick one without picking an object to infer a vector. I can pick a default vector. Right now I'm just going to say the Z there, and I'm going to pick that face, and it's going to tell me the angle is 9.3 degrees. If I apply it, I can also, when it says vector, select an object to infer a vector, and this time I'm going to pick, if it'll let me here, that edge, and then the face up here, and it's going to tell me that the angle between the two is 10.2 degrees. I'll apply that. Now I'm cleared again. The other thing a lot of people need to do is measure this actual body. How much is this piece? This is steel, so how much does this piece of steel weigh? So I'm going to just say body here, and I'm going to clear face and angle. And I'm going to change it from vector. Remember, this goes hand in hand. I'm going to change it to object. And it says face, instead of face, I'm going to change that to solid body. I'm going to pick that solid body, drag this up, and it's going to show me this block weighs basically almost 500 pounds. By expanding this, you're going to see there's two little kind of blue circles with a line on them. It creates non-associative geometry on OK or apply, which is a principal axis. Also, the center of mass will do the same thing. But I'm just going to say that the principal axis to create this non-associative direct geometry. If I would add associative checked here, it would create associative geometry. But a lot of times you want to know the center of gravity. If you're putting in a lift hole, otherwise known as a handling hole, to lift the whole thing on its center if you're a designer. And when I say OK here, I'm going to cancel out of that. You're going to see, and I'm going to turn off my WCS, you're going to see there's a little centroid type CSIS looking XYZ coordinate system on the center of gravity in all three directions. Now another neat thing that they've added, which they never had before, and I'm going to say object right now, and I'm going to change it from body to other. Now a lot of times you want to know how big this block is XYZ direction, and if you measure body it will tell you. But there's a lot of times your X, Y, and Z are very close to each other, and you really, without going back and measuring again, you don't know what the results are X, Y, and Z. But I'm hitting this other here, and I'm going to select the solid body, and it's going to tell me the length, width, and height. But notice down here it's showing me which direction is width, which direction is length, and which direction is height. So now I know length is 18 inches, height is 12, this direction, and the width is 10.1878. If you've ever done quoting on any piece parts, especially as they sit in a die set, this is very handy improvement in the measure command that never existed before. Now, just as a little advanced feature, I'm going to move into a complete assembly here. Assuming someone has built this and they want to ship it, they want to know how much this entire assembly weighs, and also it's to ship it, they want to know the length and the width because they want to build a skid, say. They're not that concerned about the height because they know it'll fit on a truck, but in order for them to build a skid, they want to know what is the direction in left to right, as we're looking at it right now, and up and down. So I'm going to go back into measure command, but I'm going to change it to object set. And I'm going to change other to being highlighted. And I'm going to leave solid body on there because I also want to know the information about the solid body. And then I'm just going to window. Oop. Try that again. It's going to crunch for a little while because there's a lot of components in this assembly. I have my results now. I'm looking at the weight of this being 2,805 pounds. Also, you can see the length, the width, and the height. And in this example, you can see the width and the height are very close to each other. But I know the width is 28.56. and the height is 27.169, so therefore I don't have to go and measure again to find out which dimension is which in the past you needed to do. Once again, if I expand this with these little arrows right here, this readout, you can see there are two choices to create the non-associative geometry because I don't have associative checked. For the centroid, or of the whole assembly, if I was a designer and I wanted to put one lift hole in to pick this whole thing, I could click that on, and once I say OK or apply, you see that that centroid for this whole assembly, if I wanted to put a lift hole in to lift it up in this direction as you're looking at, I would need to either put it right where the centroid is or put multiple lift holes in where that would become the centroid, which I'm looking at now. I can see I would have to put an eye bolt there, an eye bolt there, and maybe one here and one here, and I could lift the whole thing and it would be balanced for lifting. So, to review, first off, what we just looked at is to kind of get, if you're having an assembly, to give you all the information you want to know, the length, width, height, and the weight of an entire assembly. You can see I've highlighted the body here and the other icons, and I have object set selected up here. Hint number 1 was to check show results in information window and to also check enable hints. Hint number 2, which would be clicking on the preferences here and checking display XYZ delta values, very important. Hint number 3 being to that object to measure and results filter go hand in hand, and if you don't get the result you're looking for, to make sure that you have the two that go in hand checked together. Now right now, hint number 3 is, well, what if a lot of times users would pick point number 1 to measure, then point number 2, and then they'd go back and want to pick a different point as point number 1, but leave point number 2 where it's at. For that, I'm going to go back to the basic part I have here, and I'm going to say measure. Remember, these go together. I'm going to go point, and I'm going to just say a distance and turn these two off. My point constructor comes on. I'm going to pick, let's say, the end of that to the end of that. I'm going to my distance being 15.4. But if I do this list and I want to change what point number 1 is, I have to come up here and say point number 1. Just either X out of it or just select it, because it's going to be looking for another point. And now I'm going to pick that point there, and it's going to give me the 3D distance and then the delta X, delta Y, delta Z. If I want a different point number 2, I just have to select it and pick a different point number 2, and it's going to give me the same information. So that's basically hint number 4. How do you, instead of getting out of the command and starting over, how do you just kind of repick your starting point when one point doesn't change but another point does? That ends my demonstration of the NX 12 plus 2 NX 1899 new combined measure command. I hope you found it useful, and I hope it'll kind of help you through your struggles you may have. But keep in mind the hints. And if you follow the hints and remember, the object selection and your results go hand in hand, and if you don't get the result you're looking for, try different combinations, and the little hint box that'll come up may help you if you're struggling.